ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome into another episode of Infection Podcast. My name is Nick Craig. You can follow me. I'm verified on Twitter. At Nicholas M. Craig. You can check out our website, infectionpodcast.com. Alongside me, as always, Brian Aldridge. What's going on, buddy? Hope all's well.
It's going very well. If you want to find me, you can get me at Boise Computer on Twitter as well, or at Brian Aldridge on Gab, Gettr, Truth Social, or whichever one of those are still up. Who knows which ones?
Gab is still up.
Alive.
True Social is still up. It's
not
called
Gettr.
Twitter. No, Getter's gone. And that's the one that
is it gone? I need to stop saying
down?
Gettr. No, Parler is gone.
Parler is gone. Yeah, Gettr is still.
So I assume Gettr is still there. Maybe I should log in and actually. It still exists.
Yeah, Twitter now X. We'll talk about that coming up in a little bit. But Brian, we've got to start off with kind of the cliffhanger that we were on last week surrounding Microsoft Activision. The deadline was midnight last Tuesday. We obviously did the show earlier than that. And there was the question, what is going to happen? Could they ram through a deal very short term? That didn't seem like it was very likely. And it was announced shortly after midnight on the West Coast, so like 3 o'clock or so Eastern time in the morning on Wednesday, that the deal for Microsoft and Activision, the merger deal between Microsoft and Activision Blizzard has been extended into October. However, in an interview that same next day, Bobby Kotick was sat down with David Faber on CNBC, and he said they hope to have this deal closed in the next 60 to 90 days. So this October is, I think, the final deadline. Yeah, like this is the deadline. But they want to get this thing done as quickly as possible. Your initial thoughts?
Well, I think this makes sense because there's only little things holding it up. First of all, the FTC has suspended its administrative challenge to the merger, which was one of the things. So that kind of takes that off the table. The CMA, you remember, has said, well, okay, we'll discuss it. And, if you can come to the table and meet our demands, we'll let this go through, which means that they'll get to continue using Word and Excel and all those things that in the country. So I think that there's definitely going to be no issues with CMA because, if they're the only country holding this up, it just makes them look more foolish. But I think to save face, they need to come up with a little excuse of why they held up this deal and, make them do something. Maybe they're going to give up Candy Crush or whatever it is, to make the whole deal go through. But yeah, the 18th, they've agreed that after that, the deal will terminate. Won't terminate before. So I have hopes that whatever final things need to be done. I mean, they've stopped the administrative block from FTC, but I don't know if now there is some green light that they have to give. Is there the fact that they're not saying no anymore? Is that a yes, or does there need to be some documentation from them saying we accept the merger and give it the green light? That's what I'm assuming that they're going to have to do.
Yeah, and that's kind of what everybody is waiting to see. Now, I find it was pretty interesting, and we've talked about this a lot over the last couple of weeks. There's been this huge amount of pressure, really kind of, Brian, a black eye over the Federal Trade Commission in their unwillingness to just step out of business and stop, I'll just call it what it is, weaponizing the federal government against private industry, which is exactly what they've done with this Microsoft Activision merger. These two companies, Microsoft and Activision together, have spent probably millions of dollars on legal expenses. Who does that hurt, Brian? Not Bobby Kotick, not Phil Spencer. It hurts the employees and the consumers because that cuts out of the bottom line margin that they can either give him raises to employees, reinvest into the company, or do something else with. It doesn't hurt anybody but the little guy, which is what the FTC is supposed to be protecting in the first place. I've got a clip, if you want to roll into it, of this little back and forth. This is the morning after this, and I'll give David Faber all the credit in the world. He's been on CNBC for years, and he grilled Lena Khan over this. I'd like to just play a little bit of this so that we can hear this question and hear her response, because it's essentially the same question that he has. So this is courtesy of CNBC.
Let's just start off with what are essentially 13 guidelines Your agencies have been delivering these so-called guidelines, I believe, since 1968. What distinguishes this latest version from the others that we've seen?
Well, first of all, it's so great to be here with you. So as you noted, the agencies have issued guidelines since 1968. Of course, our markets and our economy has changed significantly since then. And so it's been longstanding practice for both the Antitrust Division and the Federal Trade Commission to periodically issue updates.
How does this actually impact the law and the way it is going to be viewed by the judges who ultimately decide whether, when you bring a case, the FTC is correct, or perhaps when they say, as was recently the case, for example, in Microsoft, when they say, no, we don't believe you?
So these guidelines reflect the law. If you look through the document, you'll see a lot of footnotes.
That's just just one little piece of, so we're going to bring forth these new guidelines, and we're going to do this, and we're going to do that to try and, just all this back and forth to try. Brian, the reality is they keep losing because judges are calling them out.
Well, and this is what we're starting to see this a lot with, especially this administration, because you're bringing in activists, people with agendas into positions of power, and it's becoming very obvious, and not just in the FTC, it's obvious in the FBI and a lot of other places, that there's a lot of personal bias and opinion and things that are leading decisions from these different organizations in the government. And I think that here, she just does a really poor job of trying to cover it up, especially when they brought her, and started grilling her at Capitol Hill. And they'd ask her yes or no questions, because this is how they love to get the people. Here's a very basic yes or no question, and I just want a yes or a no. And then she starts going off into some spiel that goes in a totally different direction. And they're like, no, I don't want to hear any of that. I just want a yes or no. Did you do this? Yes or no. And then she goes off and starts trying to do. And that made me really lose my respect for Khan, just seeing how she couldn't answer a single she couldn't answer a basic question up there, because she knew that if she answered it, it would make her look bad. And so if you're doing behaviors that you can't answer with a straight face because they'll make you look bad, why are you doing them? And it's so blatant, because I think they're just anti-business. And you're the Federal Trade Commission. You should be not anti-business. You should be hoping that business grows and flourishes and does it in a safe and healthy way. That's the goal of these organizations, not to try to stifle them and just stamp out big business. Because you're going to have, the only way that we have big things sometimes is big business. How do you think the auto industry works? We don't have little mom and pop shops here throwing together cars. You have to have a big business that builds cars. You have to have a big business that does a lot of these different things. And Microsoft, for all the infrastructure they have, it has to be a big business. Amazon, imagine if they were all small, you wouldn't have big things. And I think that the fact that they're trying to stamp them all out, people who are anti-government or anti-business or whatever it is, they'll have one opinion one way or the other. But as you're carrying around your iPhone, I just always laugh. People like to point out someone's carrying around an iPhone and say that they hate corporations. Really? Yeah. Or they're carrying around an iPhone and they say, I'm against slave labor. Okay. Well, how do you show it? Quit buying products that are made over in a place where it's equivalent to slave labor. How about that?
Yeah.
So I don't know. It's just that kind of she says things and does things not based on what the law says, and that's why they have to go out and put out new decrees and they have to put out new rules, because the laws don't match up, and that's why she's been losing in court so much. So they'll change the laws to match their opinion rather than making their ways of thinking and enacting things match the law.
Well, and that's exactly that. And she was asked a little bit about that. Here's a little bit more of this same interview, but an earlier part of it specifically about losing that battle in some of these new guidelines. I think it's rather interesting.
We obviously are bringing cases when we think there's a law violation. We've been thrilled that we've had a whole set of success, including with deterrence, which we hear a lot from
levels
market
of success,
participants
Brian.
about the deterrent effect. And
half
as
a
a law
dozen court
enforcer,
cases.
you always
That
want
means
to
you
be
don't have
making
a
sure
full
that
success.
firms are on clear notice about what could constitute a law violation and are staying far away from that line. We were very grateful to receive a budgetary increase last year. that has enabled us to be growing our ranks. We're still hiring, and we're grateful for those additional resources and the additional work we'll be able to do with them.
You know, deterrence is obviously very important, but when you do lose, there's questions here specific to Microsoft. You lost in the U.S. court. Why not drop the action from there? Why seeking appeal? Why are you continuing to follow, for example, along with the ALJ proceeding, Chair Khan? Earlier, Mr. Cantor sort of said he believes in our judicial system and will abide by judicial decisions. So why would you continue, given the court has already been heard from, with this action?
We fully believe in our robust system of judicial review. I won't be able to comment on any specific matters, but generally, if we get an adverse decision from a district court, we look very closely at it to determine whether we think there were any errors of law or misapplication of law.
All right, so that's pretty much all you need here. A bunch of nothing. But that's really the general takeaway from this is we know we lost, and at this time they were still fighting. They were still going to go forward with the appeal. They have since decided against that, but this is a really scary precedent. I'm fortunate, or I'm happy to hear that a judge did go the way of private business, which is pretty crazy to even have to be thankful for. But they did, and now it appears that this deal is going to be moving forward, and really the last holdout is going to be the CMA. I mean, I think the FTC has pretty much given up the ghost. They know that they lost. They know that there's really nothing they're going to be able to do. So now the ball's back in the CMA's court, surprisingly.
Well, and that's the thing is, I think you heard that announcer there call her out on, well, okay, you said that you would follow the rule of law, but then why are you doing this? And the funny thing, all of her responses were just talking points.
Of course,
and that seems to be the new common thing of. You get challenged, and that's what they teach them in business. You can tell she's definitely been trained on how to respond to avoid complicated questions, and everything was just
she's a politician.
Nothing. Yeah, she's a politician, and nothing was answered. What I heard, so I was watching a bunch of videos about the FBI, and one thing that I kept hearing when the director of the FBI just got nailed on questions, he would start saying to particular senators in their states, for instance, in Florida. The senator from Florida really grilled him, and he says, well, I just want you to know that we have a 100% uptick in applications from your state of Florida and our FBI.
Ah, yes.
And they said the same, but we have a 150% uptick in applications to the FBI from your state in Texas. And it's just like, these are all talking points, things you memorize so that if people say that your state has lost confidence in the FBI, they've lost confidence in your organization. That's why they're joining it, to hopefully make it turn the other direction. Not because they have confidence in what you're doing. That doesn't mean why a lot of these people are signing up, but they feel like, they're trying to just turn those talking points. And every time she talks, it's just talking point, talking point, talking point. No substance. She doesn't think of anything on the fly as far as what her answer is going to be. She doesn't answer the question. She sidesteps and does a talking point, which gives you no new information because they hand all that information out, with their press briefings and everything else. So it's just the frustrating thing is every time someone talks to a person like this, nothing new is learned. And so it's like, what's the point of the interview?
So on the flip side of this, a couple hours after, or like less than 30 minutes after this interview, Bobby Kotick, who is I didn't realize this. He was one of the original founders of Activision. I didn't realize how long he'd been around.
He's been there a long time.
It was before it was called Activision. Him and a couple of buddies started this company that became Activision. I didn't realize he's been leading it this entire time, which explains a little bit more why they hate him so much. And he was asked specifically about I think this is the part of the interview where he was specifically asked about the CMA and the holdup there. Let's jump into this, also from CNBC.
What are expectations when it comes to what is left to do there to get the approval of the CMA?
So if you think about the history of the video game business, the UK really factored significantly in the evolution of the industry. The BBC had a computer in the early 80s. Sinclair was one of the first people to introduce a consumer computer. There's a really exceptional amount of talent in animation, in art, in game design. And so I think the UK recognizes that they have an opportunity to continue to be a leader in the video game industry. And I think we're going to end up seeing reasonable resolution, and hopefully it'll be quickly.
Well, yeah, what's quickly?
So there's the reasonable. We're going to see a reasonable resolution, which I think is probably the case. So I'll stop it there with the audio clips.
Okay, so I pulled up some information about him really quick because this is, he's in 2006. He started discussing a merger between the games division of Vivendi, which is a French company, which included Blizzard Entertainment and Sierra Entertainment, which used to be a big
old school
gaming
Sierra,
company.
Yeah.
He's the one who engineered the Activision, and then he engineered this Activision Blizzard merger.
Yeah.
So he did that merger as well, which created that new company, Activision Blizzard. So, yeah, 2006. So he's been doing this for a while, and kind of started the whole thing. He was the person who made that company what it is today that they're now merging into Microsoft, we'll assume.
Yeah, and his history goes back to the late 1980s when him and his business partner bought a bankrupt Activision at the time, and he has essentially been at the helm since the late 1980s and has led the company to. I don't even know what Activision Blizzard's worth. Let's see, they are worth about $20 billion. Just a little chump change for people.
Just a little thing here.
Just a little $20 billion here or there. So it does appear that this is going to go forward in the next 45 to 60-ish days. So that's very exciting.
Yeah, we will see. All right. Do you care where we go from here? You want to talk a little bit about our favorite social media company, Twitter? Or
yes, yeah. I think that's a good area to go here. It's not really gaming news, but I've said this a lot. I've always been a pretty active Twitter user, and especially now for what I do at work, which is doing a morning talk radio show. The stuff is seen first on Twitter. The breaking news, especially more localized stuff. I'm not talking about national news, but like in the state of North Carolina, like a big bill's coming up for a vote. First place you see it is Twitter. It's not on Facebook till much later. So I use Twitter all the time. It's the reason I subscribed to Twitter Blue a couple of weeks ago, because I use the service. I wanted more of the features that the service was offering, so I decided to pay for it. Elon Musk went from the saving grace of the Democrats and the left with Tesla and this visionary guy. He was their Picasso, to public enemy number one in the last couple of years, specifically because of some of the things that he's had to say about free speech. And then when it was announced he was buying Twitter, these people lost their freaking minds. And it has continued. There's been this the constant talk of all these left-wing people now about, we're leaving Twitter, man. We're going to Mastodon. Yet they're still running their mouth on Twitter about how awful the platform is and everything else. Still giving him money because that's how the service works. Use it for free. It serves you ads. He gets paid money. I mean, that's the business model, idiots. That's kind of how this all plays out. And the big thing this week was the name change. He took the Twitter name off of the building relatively early when he bought the company, off their San Francisco headquarters. And he has owned the website, the domain x.com since like the mid-90s or early 90s. He has owned it forever before he started PayPal. Right, he was early on PayPal, wasn't he? It was him and the other guy on PayPal. So he's been in the tech stuff a long time. He's owned this domain. And he's always talked about this platform called X, this app called X that is a catch-all, which to me, and I've never used the app, but from what I understand, kind of like what WeChat is over in China. Mm-hmm. WeChat is everything. It's not just a social network. It's a search engine. It's it's like an Amazon. It's video game. It's literally everything on WeChat. And what's the other one? QQ or whatever the other. Yeah, QQ. These are like all-encompassing apps. They're everything. And he hasn't really been secret about it. He's mentioned multiple times that he was going to make Twitter X, and he changed the freaking logo in the favicon on the website, Brian, and everybody is losing their damn minds over it. And it's just, I think it shows the greater trend of what we see. A lot of this stuff in technology, and then it bleeds its way. It seems like tech gaming is like 2 or 3 years behind the curve of what goes on in technology in terms of some of the movements and the culture shifts. And I just find it hilarious, and at the same time also a little bit pathetic as to what's being written. I just want to read 3 headlines. I know you've already seen them, but for our audience, Brian, so they can kind of see what they're dealing with. This is over at IGN. X users react to Elon Musk's decision to kill famous blue bird logo. Twitter is turning into X. Analysts don't see the treasure map. Another day, another change to the Bird app. Owner Elon Musk has regularly used the letter X in his projects, as it's featured in everything from SpaceX to the name of his child. When he first purchased Twitter, Musk tweeted about his vision to turn Twitter into X, the everything app. So GameSpot at least can admit that he mentioned this from day one, but it's exhausting to read this garbage.
Well, and he's done kind of odd things. One thing I saw a note in here that he legally changed the name to X space COPR, which could mean 2 different things. I think citizen of permanent residence or something is one meaning, but the other is means dung or feces. And so I'm just wondering if he's doing that as a troll, X and X poop or whatever. He changed the name to include that. But people are freaking out because I put one of the opinion ones here. Twitter removing the little blue bird is about more than a logo. And then another one here, they said, it's a, what was the word they used? It's a reason to mourn, which makes no sense to me.
Reason to mourn?
What are you mourning about? The fact that he changed the logo. The app itself is exactly the same. It doesn't look any different. And I think here, I wonder if it'll actually be X or if it's going to be something more, because there's SpaceX, right?
Of course, yes.
This is, and he's been trying to figure out, well, what do you call a tweet now? Is it
X?
He's taking suggestions on tweets. One thing I found interesting, and I'm wondering if this is more of what he is about. I found where this logo is actually something used in math.
Oh, well,
yeah, it's actually a Unicode symbol. It's a character in Unicode, in the way that he's done the X, where it's thick on the one side. That's for math. It's part of the math alphabet. And he is a rocket scientist.
He's also very autistic.
He does a lot of math. He's all about math. And so I would think that perhaps the reason that he enjoys X so much is because it has something to do with math. He hasn't really said that, but that is what it has to do with. And I would think that because the way that he did it, the thick on the cross that goes from left to right, up, from top left to lower right, the thicker part there, that's a math symbol. And so I would assume that that's more of why he did it. And if they're wondering why he did such a simple logo, he likes simple. I think he likes things not being overcomplicated. And I assume that that's partly why I did it.
Yeah, and again, it's not like this is some random drunken decision. He has been talking about an X-all app or an X-all service since the early 90s. I mean, 30 years he's been talking about this, and even since the purchase of Twitter, which happened back in January. It's been 6 months he mentioned this idea. But, you still look at, this was one of the things I loved seeing. And again, I don't know who this idiot is, but here's the inspiration. It's a chart. Twitter profits are going to be on the downside of the X, and users of Threads are on the up. Well, Threads is down. Their active daily users is down 85% from a week and a half ago when it launched. And Twitter is seeing the highest user counts it's ever seen. But again, they just manufacture this stuff. I'm not even an Elon Musk. I'm not an Elon Musk apologist. I don't use Tesla. I don't use Starlink. I don't use any of his services. I will admit I do drink from a SpaceX coffee mug. We have a good friend that works there, and he sent me some swag, and I use that. I like Twitter. I liked Twitter before Elon owned it. I like Twitter now. But this hysteria over Twitter is just, Brian, this guy's a real threat to them, and I'm trying to understand why. What is he doing to them that causes outrage? Because you don't react unless there's a reason to react. If he was just this good old guy, whatever, you just ignore him. Why though? Why are they doing it?
Let's look at what happened early on when he bought Twitter. Because remember Twitter prior. because this is the thing that I do. I quit using Twitter for a while because the
Yes.
level of censorship that was on there. You couldn't say hardly anything. I mean, they were more restrictive than YouTube. You could barely say anything, and they'd be banning people left and right, and not necessarily banning you because you broke the terms of service. They would ban you just because they didn't like your opinion. And then they'd sometimes make up a new rule to be able to ban somebody. And just seeing that type of, I'm not allowed to have an opinion, but a person with the direct opposite opinion, and let's say somewhere in the middle is right, they're allowed to speak their opinion all day long, and I'm not allowed to even say my opinion. Like, how's that fair on a supposedly open space? I didn't think it was a private company. It wasn't an open space, whatever. Right? Actually, it was a public company, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But they were supposed to be having some sort of a marketplace of ideas, and they totally killed that because of activists in a company. And he came in and let everybody speak their opinion, and that is a threat to the left. That's why there's the hate speech thing and words are violence and all of this, and that's really gone away. One thing that I have noticed is whenever someone in the old days would say something on Twitter, you'd only see confirming points of view on that thought if it was something really liberal. You just say, oh yeah, I agree, and everything would be one direction and nobody would speak your mind. Now you actually get people from other varying points of ideas going in and making comments and being able to say things, and they don't get banned for it. Even things that I don't agree with or that I do agree with, let them post it as long as it's not something that's threatening somebody or doing something crazy that's breaking the actual terms of service. I like having a variance of opinion, and I really think that for Elon Musk, it comes down to one thing is having, because Twitter used to be a place that you could go in and predict things with. Back when they were a little more open before they started locking down, when people would come in and breaking news would happen and it'd be broadcast on Twitter, and that they were starting to use it to predict elections and see things before analysts were able to really predict them. And it was very, very powerful. But then when it got so censored, it killed that ability. They killed the primary benefit of their product by being so crazy with their censorship and making only one opinion go. And I think that Elon Musk realizes that if you can get a huge variance of opinions, it brings that ability back to maybe statistically figure out what's happening in the world and predict things that are going to happen. And also AI. I think that this is a perfect place to train AI on, because you'll get a lot of variance of opinion, because it's one of the only places on the internet where you can have a varied opinion and not be blocked. And so I think that if we're going to be training AI on things people say and how that, and kind of get a general, here's opinions of the people, you got to do it on a platform that doesn't block off half the people, or else you're going to get a very biased AI. And I think that that's a lot of it. I know he's really into AI. I really have a feeling that it comes down to a lot of its AI is why he's so open to wanting all thoughts on here. Not that he's a big libertarian or anything, because he doesn't believe the same politics as you've said. He doesn't believe in our politics, really. He's kind of a troll. He's an odd guy. Yeah. And he likes to, I think he likes to make people think that he's on their side. I don't know if he believes like I do. I assume he doesn't.
I don't think he does.
So
if you want a good time, scroll through the IGN comments specifically. Those people are the most delusional. And just read the amount of mental gymnastics that they go through. Is Elon trying to speed run bankrupting a social media company? At first, I thought it was just his incompetence, but now I feel like Twitter is systematically being destroyed from within. This is him literally changing the logo.
Yep.
Systematically destroying the company by changing the logo.
And the thing is, they're worried about brand recognition. Enough people use the product.
It's always going to be called Twitter. It doesn't matter.
It'll be called Twitter, and you can have the logo be whatever you want.
Exactly.
People are going to eventually just refer to it to whatever. I mean, what are you going to call it? X? Let's go hang out on X. I mean,
maybe
people are going to think you're doing drugs.
But here's the thing: it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter what you call it. That's the whole thing. It doesn't matter what the name of it is. It's about the service it provides in the ecosystem associated with it. And they get they're so fixated on this term, Brian, this name. They're so fixated on this guy, again, who was once their darling. And now he is literally the devil reincarnated. and it's
Well, we should call it FaceX or something like that. FaceX,
FaceX,
and then
yeah.
we could have SpaceX and FaceX.
SpaceX and Starx,
StarX,
and
Starlinks.
Starlinks. There you go. I like that. I love it's. Oh man, I always screw up this saying, but it's either do something long enough to be, you end up becoming the hero, live long enough to become the enemy, or something like that. And that's essentially what Elon Musk has become in this case. He has become the enemy simply because I do genuinely believe he thinks free speech is a big thing.
Well, yeah.
I think he believes that, and he put $40 billion where his mouth is.
If you look at what he's done with the space industry, he's pretty much saved NASA.
100%.
The equivalent. Now, Obama killed NASA. He stepped up and said, "Well, let's just do it ourselves," and he did. And so that got a lot of liberals really cheering for him because, hey, we're going back to space. And then he turned around and made electric cars that actually people wanted to drive, and really pushed electric cars to be a common thing on the streets where you saw one every day. He did that, and liberals love that. And then, of course, he bought Twitter and said everyone should be allowed to say their opinion. Oh, and now they hate him. And so, yeah, he was the darling. And it's just crazy how quickly they pivoted on him because he didn't affirm every opinion that they have. And I don't expect anybody to believe 50% of what I believe. I assume that they're only going to think like me. Well, here locally, people will be more likely to think like me. But on the internet, I don't expect people to think like me. But it's so crazy how the left pushes and just turns and hates if you don't think exactly like they do. And he definitely found that out.
Yeah. So he is the living example of it right now. What the name of the website is, I mean, what the app logo looks like, really is just, I mean, who cares? I mean, that's really what this
the product
comes down to.
Still works. I have no issues with it. It works like it did before. I don't know what they expect to be different. I mean, he's kept the product going, saved it from bankruptcy. Twitter would have been no more in a couple of months if he wouldn't have come in and purchased it.
That is very much the case, and that, of course, is not mentioned at all. Under Jack
Dorsey,
what is his Morsey? Yeah, under Jack Morsey's leadership, he literally had one of the largest websites, most brand recognizable websites in the world on the brink of bankruptcy because he could not figure out how to monetize it or cut his costs so that he could monetize it.
I mean, they were wasting. He's at 20% of the original workforce.
Yes.
They fired 80% of the workforce, and the thing still runs just fine.
Yes. And
so if that tells you anything.
Yeah, they're adding brand new features. They rolled out Twitter Blue in the way that they did. There's rolling out this monetization
2-hour videos.
Monetization for creators is huge. People are getting like $18,000, $20,000 checks because they're getting hundreds of millions of views on Twitter. I read something today. It's not available yet, but for Twitter Blue subscribers, you'll be able to download video and audio directly from Twitter. For me, that's huge because what I have to do now is run audio recording software to grab audio clips. That's going to be huge for me. All of this done, as you know, with 20% of the staff. So, continue the hate on Elon Musk. I think it only fuels him.
Yep. Yeah, he loves it. He lives off the off the hate.
And if you do follow him on Twitter, which I would recommend you do, he just pokes fun at these people constantly.
Yep. I mean, he said they're one of the richest men in the world while people hate on him and say he's stupid.
Yes.
He's doing what NASA couldn't do well, and he's doing it way better. People call him stupid. He's built cars better than any other company. Yet people are calling him stupid. So let's see if he's stupid on this one.
What a novel concept of keeping the booster instead of letting it fall into the ocean and never be used again. I mean, that's that example right there. What he did with NASA, which they would just let their boosters fall into the ocean and it just didn't matter. Saving his company hundreds of millions of dollars by making a system for them to land themselves so they can be reused. That's the difference between private industry and government. When you have a blank paycheck, there's no reason to innovate. Just let it fall into the ocean and have the Coast Guard recover it. When it's your money, your investors' money, well, let's find a way to reuse this thing. We spent $600 million on this whole setup. Why don't we figure out how we can reuse this thing? And then guess what? They did.
Yep.
And they've been able to do so on a very consistent
basis. Been doing
basis.
it over and over again.
Yes. It's just it's hilarious.
And and we even forgot. Starlink, I mean, worldwide internet. But he's stupid. Giving internet to every country and people that in third world nations didn't have access to any kind of technology. But he's stupid.
He is. He's a
Anyway.
huge idiot.
about-
According to these people, it's such ridiculous nonsense.
Hey, let's talk
stay
because
mad. Stay mad.
There's something I want to talk about, but we have to lead into it with a little bit. So Roblox,
Oh, yes.
they're all about the monetization tools, and they're aiming to be one of the biggest virtual economies on earth
okay.
in Roblox. Kids game, and so that's been something that they've been really pushing for, and it is. I mean, they make a huge amount of money at Roblox. It's a very simple type of a game, but. One thing here I want to mention really quick that happened recently is they accidentally leaked 4,000 of their developer profiles, including, identifying information. It was 4,000 of their employees. So, that may be something that kind of gives them a black eye. And if they can't handle their own things, how are they going to become one of the biggest economies on earth if they can't keep their employees' information safe? But that's a whole another thing. But I saw something that's going to be coming out on Roblox here pretty soon, Nick.
Okay.
And I immediately thought of you. And it's something that allows you to be an extreme storm chaser online.
Oh, wow.
And I know that this has been your dream, but they're
That's
making
the truck
it in
from
Roblox.
Twister. Yeah, that's the car from
Yes.
from Twister, my
They're calling
favorite
this
movie of all time.
Twisted.
Look at that. It's
And
a
so
Dow.
you can live the life. I mean, it's actually done pretty well. I mean, for being done in Roblox, which this is really the use of Roblox, is creating unique game modes and things that you don't want to create all of the movement and the network code and all of that. But look at what they've done. I mean, the tornadoes and the hurricanes ripping apart buildings. It's done pretty good, and it just released here, I think, 2 days ago, if I remember correctly. I had a link to it, and it's gone away. Where'd it go? It
Brian,
worked earlier today. I'll try to. Fix
I
that
will
for you.
say I am not a Roblox player, but
They took it down. I can't.
no, they didn't. I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, it's not loading on mine.
No, it is. It's
Request
loading
bad
here.
request. Okay. Well, they won't let me look at it.
Yeah, well, I got it pulled up here. It does note this game will not run well on low-end devices. Obviously, a lot of particle things going on there.
Yeah.
Brian, I don't know how I need to figure out how to do Roblox, how that works exactly. But look at all these other ones.
I think you can play on the phone.
Well, no, it says it won't run on low-end device. Look at all these other ones. Oh,
Yeah.
look at that. Looks like
See,
I wonder if
that's what
their
I'm getting.
store's
I
doing.
wonder
I
if
wonder if their
there's-
store's doing maintenance or something.
They must be doing something because it pulled up a little bit earlier today. I was thinking, oh no, they took it down. Maybe there was some copyright thing, but
I'm going to
temporary
go
issue.
ahead and give this a shot and report back. I can relive my
Good.
movie of being Bill Paxton, great man, rest in peace, from Twister, and I will report back, Brian, about my experience. I'll record it, and we can.
Okay, thank you. Because
I'll
it
talk
looks
about
cool from the
There's
the
a
video.
couple of games like this. There's another one. I'm in one of their Discords, and they're making a full game like this, which is going to be a hard sell because you're talking about a very niche community. But to do it as a Roblox mod, I mean, that's pretty perfect.
Yeah. Well, I want to see one of these made in Unreal Engine 5.
There
where
is already
it's
one.
just,
Let me see if I can find it.
But does it done well? Because I've seen things
Well.
made in Unreal that aren't taking advantage of any of the newer technologies, and especially Unreal Engine 5.2 and the new things they've done with particle effects. That'd be perfect for a storm like this because they've made it to where you can have a huge number of things and it doesn't lag your machine out. And so I think that's going to be technology is finally creating up with being able to create a high definition storm chasing game. So I have hope for you.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it right now. I don't have my Discord open while we're doing the show. Here it is. It's called Outbreak. OUTBRK is the name of the game. I think it's. I I own this one and I've played this one before. I have access to the beta. I don't know if it fits your definition of well done. I mean, I think it looks pretty cool.
Well,
I think it looks nice.
There's one called
for what it is.
Project Storm, and this one's supposedly a next generation storm chasing simulator. They have a Discord as well. Now they haven't posted for almost for about a year
Well,
now,
probably
which
not too
makes me
great,
a little bit nervous. But they've been making a lot of clouds, and who knows? It's hard to make storms that are really realistic. You can make clouds and everything, but then you start having to doing a lot of coding to make actual storms. So maybe they got stuck there. But we'll see. Hopefully soon. There are a lot of ones that people are making, but I think if you made one that's cool enough, people would be willing to try it out.
Yeah, the one that's the coolest one would be Outbreak game, and they just put out an update back on June 30th. They do about a dev blog a month, when they go over some of the detail. Look at this, Brian. They added in their most recent update like a little CB, yes, a little CB. Rich, remember, didn't we tell H1Z1 to do that? To add like a multi-channel.
And then they had like sidebands and everything else. It's like, just make a simple 40-channel CB radio.
Powered radio, yeah. So
and then
if you're I have access to this one, Outbreak. It's pretty neat. But I'll try out.
I found a picture of myself when I was 12, sitting in front of my CB radio, holding the
If you
mic,
gave me 5 minutes, I could have you a picture of me sitting directly behind me talking on my ham radio right now. It's a fun little hobby. Well, thanks, Brian. Thanks for cheering me up. I really needed that. It's been, working in politics kind of miserable, and talking about all these terrible people like Lena Khan and all these other idiots. It's this is a good uplifter. Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. So, let's talk about China to really kind of bring it back home.
Bring the mood back. Yeah, absolutely. Let's hit it.
So, there's been a lot of talk here in the past month about this U.S.-China tech war heating up.
Oh, yeah.
And Biden, surprisingly, is one of the ones who started instigating it with the whole CHIPS Act, saying that companies couldn't go and do business in China if they wanted to receive money from the government. China. EGX is right on the ball there. UGX5 thinks the sub, and he says China. And so this has been kind of creating some contention between the countries. And there's been some things happening over in China that I think ours are trying to limit them, then made them open up this whole crackdown that they were doing. I really think the fact that we were starting to push back on them, they realized that for the industry to survive, they had to open everything up. But they ended that crackdown, and they've been doing very well. They've actually had a pretty big boom. Their 40 billion video game market, according to them, has bounced back. And so I think our industry is really struggling. I mean, we've been listing week after week the layoffs and everything else. I think with them, whether it's false, improvement or whatever, they have been having some of their companies do more investments. For instance, Tencent just became the majority stakeholder in Dying Light Studios. So this is one that we talked to them a couple times at PAX. They made that zombie game. It's funny that they keep buying zombie games, but they don't allow skulls. They don't allow blood in their video games, but they buy zombie games. That part doesn't make sense to me. But, China is really, I think, trying to push back on us. I know that recently they hacked one of our major governmental organizations here pretty recently. And then that definitely was embarrassing to us.
Yeah, that was like there was like a weird Microsoft glitch with being able to fake a login certificate, and they were able to get access to some government emails or something. Yeah, pretty interesting.
And one thing though is they're going to be breaking up Alibaba, and Alibaba
China
has 100. Yeah, they have $132.5 billion revenue for fiscal year 2022. And so what they're going to do is a major restructuring of the company that they announced here this month, or actually in March, that promises to put it into 6 different business units. So they're going to be doing public offerings for these 6 business units. One is going to be digital media and entertainment, and that's going to be I don't know, is it Youku? I don't know if these are the names, or I think they're breaking them up into separate companies, Youku and UC Web. And then they're going to be doing local consumer services, which is like AMAP, Ella.me, and Kube. I don't know how to pronounce all these. Then they have logistics, which is their shipping that they're going to be breaking up, which is going to be Kainayo. Then they're going to have international commerce, which is AliExpress and Lazada. Then they're going to have cloud intelligence, which is going to be AI, Alibaba Cloud, and DingTalk. And then they're going to have China Commerce, which is going to be their major investments of, like Taobao and Tmall. So very odd that they're breaking this up, but I think kind of remember what H1Z1 did. Maybe they're worried that if they can't limit one company if they only want to limit one. They will limit the whole company and affect a lot of areas when they're trying to limit and restrict one area of it. And I think if they block it up and then they want to say, all right, well, we're not going to allow any more, cloud, whatever, or logistics stuff here, they can then go after the logistics side without messing up. Because Alibaba was just a huge conglomerate of things. It did everything. It was kind of like our Amazon. I mean, it's equivalent of our Amazon here. Ships all kinds of things places, has a lot of different services. So I personally, I think it's because they needed to make sure that they could still do all of their manipulation that they like to do with these companies without it making the whole thing just kill their whole market.
Yeah, that's interesting. That I didn't realize Alibaba had all those side services that they were also. I mean, I should assume, but I just wasn't aware.
Yeah, they've gotten huge. Now,
well,
one thing that I didn't realize is they fined that Ant Group, their tech giant Ant Group in Tencent, $1 billion. And that's what ended this crackdown. So they fined them $1 billion, and then they kind of opened it all up. So
Tencent's the largest video game company in the world right now.
Yeah, and they keep buying companies, and I wish people would wake up. It's not going to help the video game industry in the end. Having a communist-backed organization controlling all of your media is not going to end well.
Yeah, I wish I knew more about the whole Tencent thing. It's hard to find out information about these companies because it's so hard to you can't read news out of China because we know what I mean, they control their media like literally an iron fist. So many media outlets in the United States are so anti-China, which I understand. Believe me, I'm not pro-China, but it's hard to get a true grasp as to what exactly Tencent is. And I mean, I think we have a pretty good description and rundown of what they are and kind of what they're about. I wish I knew more about them because, for example, Activision, Blizzard, and Microsoft right now, all of these companies have deals with Tencent to help with getting games released over in China. And are they do they have to do a deal with the devil because it's the only option? It's the only way to get in there, or is that side of Tencent that's allowing and helping getting these games approved, is that not as bad as maybe other parts of the company? I just don't know. It's really hard to try and understand.
Well, one thing I do know is that you're not allowed to go and do direct business and dealings in China.
Correct.
Activision Blizzard can't just go into China and be like, well, we're now in China. So they have to go through a representative that is assigned, or through kind of a mediator to get into the country, and that's what the type of thing that Tencent does, and these type of organizations do. And so you're forced to work with these companies, and it artificially makes them bigger and bigger and bigger because their government's regulating that you work with them. Now it's smart. But then now you have these giant companies that, what are we going to do about it? They're buying up half of our companies here, and it's being run by a communist government. And eventually, if they decide they want to restrict what we watch, they already do that with the media industry. If they want to restrict what we are able to play and what we see when we play video games, they're now at a point where they can do that to a point. Through a lot of the companies that they own. Riot is owned by a Chinese company. These games that a lot of people play are owned by Chinese companies. If they want to tell that company, you can no longer put these sort of things in your games, what are they going to say? I mean, their owner is telling them what they're going to do. There's no pushback. We've set up a situation where they can come in and just say, this is no longer going to be in video games. And one thing that I find interesting, though, is China is not pro-LGBTQ. I think that, if anything, people that maybe if people have opposite type of thinking of what we do, really, you should be worried because China just has put in bans on representing LGBTQ in videos, and there's a whole bunch of restrictions that even just in the last couple of weeks they've put in for LGBTQ things. And so if you're thinking that you're happy that these communists are coming in and purchasing this, you're when the chopping block comes, you're the first ones on it. When it's something that they care about, they're not going to be having all of this representation, like you like to say, in the video game industry anymore.
And it's not even just the LGBTQ community. China is an incredibly bigoted and racist country. I think.
They take out black people from
Star Wars
posters.
poster. Yeah, I mean that's the most jarring example of the amount of cultural oppression in China. So you're right, Brian. It's like all these big libs, all these socialists that are like, oh, China this, China that. It's like, well, go visit China.
Think they understand.
No, they don't. It's not that you don't think they don't understand. You're talking about one of the most. Them and like Iran are up there on some of the most oppressive countries in the world that exist right now. So it's definitely interesting to note. But I'll say this. Prior to President Trump, China just essentially was on cruise control and autopilot. Nobody in the U.S. really wanted to stand up to them. The Obama administration removed a bunch of tariffs on China and allowed them more access to the Western world in terms of commerce. Trump was the first one, even in the GOP primary, to really bring up the risk that China is and continues to be. And Biden has done some stuff. He tried to do the things with the CHIPS Act. That's going to end up coming back and biting him in the ass, to no surprise.
Yeah.
But they really are a real risk, not only for video games and movies, but broader technology, silicon manufacturing and chip manufacturing. I mean, there's a real risk that we've covered the stories. I don't know if on this show, but we've heard about them of, companies like ZTE building backdoors into the network chip firmware, not into the OS, not anything that would even be detectable, baked into the firmware of the little silver connection where you plug an Ethernet cable in for backdoors. I mean, these guys are really, really smart. They know what they're doing and they're playing the long game. And hopefully somebody can stand up to them, because it's a terrifying process and future with our Chinese overlords hanging over our head. That's not something I'm interested in.
Well, and let's talk about diversity here, because this is something that this was at the beginning of this month when they said that, first of all, the colleges can no longer use certain things to reject people.
Affirmative action.
The affirmative action ruling, according to the Washington Post, could be a blow to diversity in tech. Now,
darn.
I understand that it might make it to where 50% of the people that get accepted into some colleges are no longer minorities. But you know what? The 50% of the applicants aren't minorities. So I think that that's one thing that it was actually very unfair, and a lot of people will have maybe a different opinion on that.
No,
but I think it's funny how they don't correlate that was unfair hiring practices. And when you say, well, then it's going to make it to where not as many minorities are getting hired into companies. No, it's just going to mean that you're not unfairly blocking people of other races and other ethnicities from that list from being hired places. That's what it really came down to. It wasn't that you were making it more fair for them. You were just making it more fair for other people, because there was nothing rejecting people, not for years now. I will say that back, before the 80s and in older times, sure, there were things where people would use bias and not accept people to colleges purely based on bias, or not allow people into schools based on bias. But I think that's something that went away, especially in the 90s, to where anybody could get into college.
Yeah, and I mean, without getting too deep into the whole affirmative action thing, I mean, you looked at, and one of the schools that was sued in this was UNC, the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, alongside Harvard. And I followed this very closely, and I've talked to a lot of experts on it. And, in an attempt to be diverse, Brian, to the surprise of nobody, they pushed the envelope too far, and they ended up implementing bigoted policies to try and fit quotas and to hit levels. And it ended up creating a culture that was in fact bigoted and racist, in which they would literally treat Asian students differently. They were a much high. If you were Asian, you had to compete at a significantly higher level than other students with different skin colors and different backgrounds. That is incredibly bigoted. That is not equality. They claim that it is. It is not. It is bigotry. And
the problem is
okay
there's a
with
difference
that.
between the equal outcome thing is I think what people get confused on. You know, there's equal rights and there's
Equal opportunity.
opportunity
Yes.
versus equal outcome.
100%.
And what they're trying to get is equal outcome. No,
Doesn't
that's not
possible.
what it's about. Equal outcome isn't how the world works. But you know what? Equal opportunity. I'm fully for equal opportunity. Give
Amen.
everybody the opportunity to be able to get into college. But you know what? You might have to take high school a little bit seriously. You might have to study a little bit. You might have to try to do well at test scores so that you have the equal opportunity to go apply and be judged with everyone else equally. And that's what they didn't like. Because you'll hear Kamala Harris, our favorite narrator, talk about
diversity.
talk about equal outcome. And that's her thing is she wants equal outcome. You want somebody, you know, it's like saying somebody who has put no effort in, doesn't want to do any work, doesn't want to try, but you're demanding that they have the equal outcome to somebody who does their best and tries. Just like in sports, you got to have it to where the person who's willing to put in the legwork, the person who's willing to be dedicated, motivated, disciplined, is the one who's going to get the play time, but not in an equal opportunity not in an equal outcome type of a position. You then have to put the person who doesn't care, who doesn't try, out there just as much. And guess what? You end up losing. And that's where we've been for years now, is we're starting to lose in industry, in tech, in competing against other countries that aren't doing this because we want equal outcome, not equal opportunity. And that's what really drives me nuts is we're shooting ourselves in the foot. You wouldn't do it in sports, right? You wouldn't say, well, let's play the person who can't even, you know, shoot a basket in for 50% of the game. You're guaranteeing a loss. And we're guaranteeing losses, but we're supposed to think that it's all good. Give everybody the opportunity to compete, because just like in the early days of computing, you had, you know, there's that movie that has the black women who were pioneers in math and computing. You know, they were given an opportunity and they were able to compete equally, and it opened up that whole thing to where people started being treated equally. And I think that if they would have, you know, that was a perfect example of that equal opportunity. They were given an opportunity and they excelled. It wasn't because it was handed to them. It wasn't because it was made easier for them, but they were able to compete. And you're making it, what the racist part that I see is when you assume that a person who's a minority can't compete because they're a minority, that's racist.
We have a term.
Because there's plenty of people who can.
The term, it is the soft bigotry of low expectations, Brian, and it is one of my favorite phrases to use because that's precisely what it is. It's that, and then on the flip side, you assume because of somebody's background that they are at a higher level and standard, and you treat them differently. It's so amazing to me, and we got to get out of here, but it's so amazing to me that a group of people that claim to be you know, we're not racist, we're not any of these things, we don't do stereotypes or anything like that, are ones that are we're actively supporting and are now actively encouraging schools to treat people differently based on their skin color.
Their skin color.
It really is unimaginable, Brian, that those are the same group of people, but they are. Now, will this hurt tech? Going back to the original point of the Washington Post, democracy dies in darkness, which is one of the most rag outlets in the entire world. No, probably not, because if you're a competent person, whether that makes you a minority based on your gender, your race, your sex, whatever it might be, if you can perform in whatever you're going to school for, no, it shouldn't affect diversity at all. What it is going to affect is diversity hires. And guess what, Brian? Diversity hires are bad for business, they're bad for consumers, and they're bad for industry. There's no benefit of propping up somebody who is not competent or capable just because of a box check. That is not beneficial to anybody involved. Case in point, take a look at our unbelievably, ridiculously stupid transportation secretary. He was a diversity hire, and look at how much he screwed everything up. Doesn't work. Checking boxes doesn't lead to good situations or outcomes.
Well, and that's where I think we've seen a lot in our current government is people being put into positions purely based off of that box.
The luggage man or woman or whatever it is.
Yeah, that person for the nuclear whatever
nuclear waste,
who ended up going to jail.
Yeah,
the Secretary of Health. I mean, all these people that check boxes. That if you go look at our current, I saw a meme where it showed like 4 major countries' secretaries of health, and it looked like the most unhealthy people you've ever seen. Yet they're supposed to be telling the country how to be healthy.
Rachel Levine, our secretary. When I think of health, I think of Rachel Levine. Yeah. Great job, everybody. We did it.
Of mental and physical health. Yes.
Jesus Christ. All right, Brian. Let's get out of here. This is enough. You know, you had me all hyped up. Talking about tornadoes. I was thinking of my favorite movie, and now you lead me down this rabbit hole. You are a bad influence, my friend.
I just had to leave it in the gutter. And, well, if you want to find me, you can find me at Boyce and Computer on X.com, or if you want to go to at Brian Aldrin on Gab, maybe Getter, Truth Social, wherever else it's available. If you want to go check out my blog, biteoftech.com. And, of course, if you go to our website, that's probably the best way that's still around. Just join our server on Discord at infectionpodcast.com. There's a link right up there in the upper right. And it'll take you into a server where if you want to maybe play some ARC, we got 11 ARC servers running. We've got a place that if there's show news that you want to post, go ahead and put a link in there, and we'll review that before the live show happens. And politics and everything else that you can go participate, or maybe just contact us directly. That's an excellent place. If you want to watch the live show, you can do that through Twitch or YouTube. You can watch the recording after the fact on Rumble, or you can go listen after the fact at whatever platform and device that you find most convenient at the lower right. If you are doing that, you can go ahead and click on the particular show notes for the episode, and we have a video and audio player built into that page, and then links for everything that we referred to throughout that show. So maybe we showed some videos in an episode and you want to be able to see that, but you're listening to the podcast. That's the perfect place to go do that and still keep a kind of low bandwidth situation. If you want to support us, up top there's a menu option, or infectionpodcast.com/support.
Brian, you also got some exciting family news this week, no?
Oh, yes. So we did our gender reveal. I don't know if everybody knew because we didn't announce it till fairly recently, but my wife is pregnant again. This will be the final baby. After that, it'll be the snip. Guaranteeing that.
Why? Why would you? Why? I'm a young man. I got my whole life ahead of me. I don't want to be thinking about that, Brian. Come on.
Believe me, there's a point where you just no more kids. You can't. And so we're gonna have a little girl. We have a bunch of boys in the house. My wife is highly outnumbered, and so we'll be bringing a little girl into the house, and I'm sure it'll change the dynamic quite a bit.
Absolutely. Well, congratulations to you and Tara, and very, very exciting.
Thank you yes, we were very excited. Thank you.
And look at this. Maybe we could replace Brian with a female co-host and get some diversity in here.
I know.
I'm much looking forward to
I'll start training her.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it. We'll catch up with you next week. You can follow me on X as well. Look at this. At Nicholas M. Craig. Yeah, not a big deal. A little blue check mark. $90. That's what it'll get you. You can check out my daily antics at nickcraig.com. It's the Wilmington's Morning News Podcast. If you missed any portion of today's show, don't forget to check out our website. It's infectionpodcast.com. Thank you so much for joining us, everybody. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.